It's the Sports Peninsula podcast coming up. We continue our NFL draft prospect coverage leading up to the April 25th first round start here in Detroit, Michigan. In this episode, we'll look at the interior offensive line prospects, the centers, and the guards. Prior to the free agency period opening up, this was perhaps the number one group that Brad Holmes and the Detroit Lions needed to address. With the imminent departure of Jonah Jackson and Big B, the Lions were still able to re-sign Graham Glasgow and sign veteran Pro Bowler Kevin Zeitler from the Baltimore Ravens. Do the Lions still need to address this position group in the draft? We'll give our thoughts and break down the top prospects next. Now, here is your Sports Peninsula team. Indeed, that is the question of the hour here on the Sports Peninsula podcast. Welcome, everybody. Do the Lions need to address this position still, and do they need to address it in round one? We're going to talk about that and more with the interior offensive line position group here. My name is Dave Drzinski Drew, and I am joined by Coach Andy Shield of the Marine City Mariners. And Coach, that's the question on a lot of people's minds, right? Is it still a position of need? And if it is, how big of a need is it in our view? And we're going to talk about that, but welcome, Coach.
Great to see you, Drew. A little early spring snowstorm here to kind of wash things out and get us here down the home stretch to the weekend of April 25th and through the 27th, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, in case we were getting a little too big for our britches, right? Thinking it was springtime already. No. Not yet.
Not in the Sports Peninsula.
No. Yeah, about 4 to 6 inches out there in the Metro Detroit area, but she'll be all gone by tomorrow. And
the groundhog done turned around and looked down.
Yeah. Just a little bit. Roads were slick yesterday. I'll tell you that. They were not good.
Oh yeah. We had a near miss over here, and no, it was a rough commute.
Well, Coach, coming into our draft coverage back in February, early February, when we started doing this right after the Super Bowl, me personally, I really was wanting to eye up a guard/center combo guy at 29. Cornerback was position group 1B. There was no doubt in my mind the Lions would not and could not retain Jonah Jackson because of the salary cap only, no reflection on him whatsoever. They couldn't afford him. And when you think about it, they signed Glasgow and Zeitler for a combined $12 million and change. Jackson's getting $17 a year alone. Now, is Jonah Jackson better than Graham Glasgow? Yeah, he is. Is he better than Kevin Zeitler? I don't know. They're pretty close. I get long-term. Yeah, he's got some more year. He's going to be able to play longer now because Zeitler's been in the league for 12 years, but they signed him to a one-year deal. But then there's the caveat. You've got Glasgow for 2, I believe, and Zeitler for 1. So in my mind, this is still a position group the Lions are going to have a very keen eye on going into the draft starting on round 1. Your thoughts, Coach, before we jump into the prospects?
Echo that sentiment, Drew. I echo that sentiment. Absolutely, this is a position. And what your original feelings were in regards to sort of your pecking order wish list, that doesn't have to change. It really doesn't have to change. They still, we've had some other developments that have occurred, with the release of Cam Sutton. And those developments, which is an ongoing situation, and hope that resolves itself with all due justice coming to everyone involved. Does it necessarily change because of that? No, not necessarily, because I would say this: do we need to address the cornerback or defensive back position in this draft? Yes. Do we need to do it at pick 29 in round 1? No. Do we need to draft the interior offense? Do we need to address the interior offensive line in this draft? Yes. Do we need to do it at pick 29 in round 1? No. So, defensive tackle, yes. Round 1, no. Edge, yes. Round 1, no. So we're kind of in that position still, in that situation still. So could we address this at 29? I absolutely think we could. I think it really comes down to, of some aforementioned positions, maybe even including still the wide receiver position as well.
Mm-hmm.
If somebody really pops at 29, yeah, I think you do jump at them at this spot because you alluded to it. Zeitler's going to be here for 1 year, likely 1 year. Glasgow's here for a couple. Ragnow is here he's here long term, but it's really that could change at really any given point in time because injuries be told and life endeavors that he has also pursuits on and can very easily do. He's almost achieved it already. He could transition into that phase of his life pretty quickly. We would be looking at that spot too. Is there a slam dunk in this class? I think there's a great couple fits. Yes, that would be really good Detroit Lions. But again, is it with the Zeitler signing, we addressed the guard because we needed a starting guard, which to me this would have then made this probably priority number one.
Yeah,
we no longer need a starter. We need some utility player that can play multiple positions and is going to be able to get some reps that way that eventually is going to have a fit as a starter. That's what we're going to look to draft in Detroit come the 25th, 27th of this next month.
Yeah, you hit it on the head. This is and this is the beauty of what Brad Holmes was able to do and company and the whole staff was able to do this free agency period. They shored up all the open spots. And I know we're not talking corners here, but even now, we were talking just before we started recording, was Cam Sutton even going to start on this team come camp? Doesn't look like it, not based on who they signed, who they traded for. Davis, Robertson, Branch, that's good luck. And bringing Mosley back. Yeah, I mean, certainly he was in the mix and he was going to compete, but nothing was guaranteed. So, and you certainly like the depth in the room, still like the depth, but obviously there's a spot that they're going to need to fill. And again, it could be at 29, like you said. But the point I'm trying to make before we jump into the prospects is that once again, Brad Holmes has set this team up for a second year in a row where he can take the best player on their board. Like you said, it could be a wide receiver. Hell, it could be a position we weren't even thinking about. But you know what? It's the best football player on the board, and it's going to make the team better. They will make it happen. They'll make it work. And that we're not used to that as Lions fans yet, but I think we're going to start getting used to that more because, again, this is year 2. I have no reason to doubt that year 3 will be the same thing, and that's what's called in statistics a trend. And then that will start – we start thinking differently about the draft process for the Detroit Lions. This is true for any team. This isn't just a Lions thing. This is true for any team. How are you? What's your philosophy in the draft? I mean, are you constant? If you're constantly having to fill gaps, immediate starting positions all the time, I'll show you a team that's a losing team. It's just what it is. If you wanted to talk about the Patriot way, other than having TB12 under center, which was a big part of it, this is how they did it. This is what Bob Quinn tried to do, couldn't do it. This is what Matt Patricia tried to do, couldn't do it. This is what Brad Holmes, Chris Spielman, and Dan Campbell are doing. They got the core established, and they're going to sign their big-name players, their star core players, and they're going to rotate through the other position groups because they're going to cultivate talent constantly through the draft. They're going to make these 1 or 2 year deal signings in free agency like Zeitler, like Glasgow. I mean, and they're going to keep cultivating the talent through. And that's what we've wanted for years. That's why the Lions were in the NFC Championship game last year. That's why we have hopes for even more this year. So, Coach, we're going to start talking about this interior offensive line group. This is the guards and the centers, folks. And the beauty of this is, we're really looking at, even when we looked at the tackles, we're looking at our guys able to move inside. Well, in this situation, we're looking at can guys play center and guard? How versatile are they? And believe me, to a team like the Lions, that's a big, big deal, especially right now. You touched on it, Coach, about Frank Ragnow and the guards being on shorter term contracts. That's going to be really important coming up. But let's look at the field here we're going to be talking about, Coach, and let's introduce the contestants, if you will.
Well, Drew, when we're talking about the SPP interior offensive line big board, we try to include both. We try to include, position-specific interior offensive linemen, whether you're a guard or a center, specifically or designated, or if you have what they call position versatility, where you can play both positions or even flex out and play tackle. So we have evidence of that on our top 20 all across it. We've updated it since the combine, as well as the upper 10 guys with some video study and prospect study that way too, and have adjusted some things. Dynamics and position versatility weighed heavily in our big board, Drew. It weighed heavily in our big board. And without any further ado, we'll get going on that right now. Kingsley Iguacan gun from Florida, center from Florida. Can flex out and play a little bit of guard, but primarily a center. Delmer Glaze, also a center guard from Maryland. So a couple of guys right there that have a little position versatility. Those are guys that are at 20 and 19. At 18 is a guard from TCU, Brandon Coleman. Another guard from Utah, Satoa Lumia from Utah, is another guy that plays tackle as well. So there's a little bit of position versatility. A guy that's primarily a guard, Layden Robinson from Texas at 16. Jared Penning at number 15, guard tackle from Northern Iowa. So a prospect from the FCS. Center from Arkansas, Bo Limmer. I don't know any centers from Arkansas that are on the Detroit Lions right now, but actually we do. That guy's Frank Ragnow, but there's a center from Arkansas. Center from the University of Michigan, national champion Drake Nugent. Isaiah Adams is an interesting one. He's an interesting one, Drew, because he's played defensive line as well. So he's a guy that's transitioned over to guard. So he's a big, tall guard from Illinois. Reaching in here now at 11 is Javion Cohen, who is an Alabama transfer over to Miami. He's a guard-specific football player right there. Dominic Puny, somebody that we talked about in the tackle group. Now, here's a guy that's actually we've talked about at tackle. He also plays guard. He really can possess true position versatility and can play guard or tackle, both left or right. We are going to talk about a couple of guys that can do that later. Dominic Puny from Kansas enters our top 10 as one of those as well. Another guard-specific player, a couple in a row here. Zach Zinter from Michigan, another national champion. We saw him get hurt against Ohio State. He's on the mend. He is one of the top 10 interior offensive linemen in this draft. Christian Mahogany, another guard-specific player, but he's a very good one. Very good gap power option at guard. Troy Fatanu, another guy that we highlighted as an offensive tackle. Talked about him in great depth. We'll talk about him again today. We're going to talk about it again today, Drew. He's going to be another one of these players that can play both guard or tackle, left or right. Christian Haynes from UConn at 6, guard-specific player. However, probably possesses the length to become a right tackle if needed. Into our top 5, we have two players that are truly position specific in our top 5. Zach Frazier is our 5th from West Virginia. He is a center, pure form center. That is the position he's going to play in the NFL. And at 4 is Graham Barton from Duke. This is a name we'll circle around him. We're going to put a circle around him. He has played left tackle for several years at Duke. He's also considered a very, very flex option at guard. Almost all scouts will tell you he's got a future career at guard. He also is a freshman All-American center at Duke. So true position versatility from left tackle to right tackle. From left tackle to right tackle, including the guards and center, is Graham Barton from Duke. Position-specific player out of Georgia, Cedric Van Pran Granger. We will be speaking of him. Now, this is another guy that's primarily a center. And he's the last of our position-specific guys because Cooper Beebe, Drew, can play both guard or tackle, left or right. Another one of these guys, he's of the build, of the strength, and of the flexibility and agility to do it. Cooper Beebe's our number 2 prospect. And then at number 1, and the guy will be highlighting next, Jackson Powers Johnson from Oregon, the Remington Award winner, top center in the game. However, this guy's got a ton of guard under his belt as well. And this guy is a position versatile football player, Drew.
Real excited about that group, Coach. And Puny and Barton definitely stick out. And I love Dominic Puny moving inside. No question. I know he was a dark horse for us in the tackle group. And Barton certainly. It's a deep class, and I'm very excited to get into this. And without further ado, let's do so. Once I cue it up, there we go. Jackson Powers Johnson out of Oregon. Coach, love him. Talk about him.
Well, he's our number 1 overall prospect in the interior offensive line group. And he, like I said, the name of the game really for our intents and purposes, we put some weight on is some position versatility, and he exhibits that. He has 430 career reps at right guard. He's taken about 30 snaps between left guard and right tackle as well. 900 career snaps at center. So yes, he's transitioned into a center, but he is truly an interior offensive lineman. He can play some guard for you. He's out of Draper, Utah, 6'3", 328. So he's of a real thick builded player. So he's got that kind of beef and bulk to play in this league, because you have to be really, really thick and strong to be able to endure on the interior of any line, offense or defense in the NFL. He's an All-American, All-Pac-12 guy. Like we said, the 2023 Remington Award winner. The Remington Award goes to the college football's top center, and that is Jackson Powers Johnson for the 2023 season. In his career, he has not allowed a sack. You look at the snaps. He's been out there, well over 1,300 snaps in his career. Well over 1,300. Mm-hmm. 0 sacks, 3 quarterback hurries in his career, and 1 quarterback hit. So this is a guy that's been very, very prolific and very, very successful. And watching him on film, he's just a bowling ball bully out there. Just mean. Just throws himself in the blocks. Very successful guy at the college level, primarily at center. But he can help you at guard. He can play at guard.
Very, very important, obviously, to any team that'd be a versatile guy like that. In terms of the Detroit Lions, super critical to be able to support at guard and center. Ask any fan last year how many positions Graham Glasgow played, right? And there Absolutely. It is. There it is. What else does he bring to the table, Coach? Because there's a lot.
Well, like you had just mentioned here, he offers complete position versatility from left guard to right guard, left guard, center, and right guard. He's got an extremely powerful, compact frame. Just literally like a barrel. That's kind of how he's truly built. Mm-hmm. He's got a dense, heavy run anchor. Does not get knocked off. If you stonewall him, it's going to be a stalemate. Which is not a win for him, but it's not necessarily a loss either, because he is just a real dense, thick anchor in the run game. Powerful, heavy hands. He's an inside leverage machine. You want to talk about inside leverage, you'll see what I'm talking about, what he's able to gain with some of his run blocks if you just YouTube his name and look for his highlights. Excellent athlete for his size and frame. Can move his feet. He's agile. He can really be somewhat nuanced with his steps. Good footwork, explosive, quick, initially off the ball, which you have to be a high-end center. You've really got to have that quickness to you. He's definitely got plenty of it. He's scheme diverse in the run game. Yes, he was in primarily a spread offense at Oregon, but he can do the power gap schemes as well as the zone stuff. Whatever it's called upon, Jackson Powers Johnson can answer in that regard. He's a competitive and confident player. He's only got about 1,400 or so reps in college, which we're going to go over a bunch of guys that have quite a few more than that. But he's, in a compact size playing career at Oregon, which was, substantial. He was a great player there. Played a lot of football for them. He's real competitive and confident. He's an excellent double team partner, can really work with a guy in combo, take somebody for a ride. He can climb up and move up in the pole and screen game and work off of poles as a center or as a guard. This is a great player, Drew. If somehow Jackson Powers Johnson is at 29, I don't know if you can walk away from that. He's not going to be. This is going to be the first interior lineman coming off the board, and I don't think it's even close.
Yeah, and I mean, honestly, getting closer to the draft and seeing when we'll see how things shake out in the next month, because there will be more moves. There's been trades already. You almost you got to look at the board, obviously, but this is actually somebody that you would honestly consider trading up to get. That's how good he is. And what a valuable piece he'd be in Detroit, certainly. But yeah, I totally agree with you. He's not going to be there at 29. He's going ahead of that. He does have some things to work on, though, Coach. Right? Let's talk about that.
Well, he's a thick, dense, wide-bodied guy, and sometimes, this is a physical game. It's tough and rugged, and you're going to get banged up and you're going to get worn down a little bit. He's going to get a little bit upright. Which then, when he's doing that, he's going to lose some of that mobility and some of that leverage ability. His punch won't mean as much. It's going to be just a kind of a softer, mushier player. That can happen a little bit, especially if he gets worn down somewhat. Having shorter arms, that actually can help with your quickness and your ability to punch and do some things, multiple things with your hands, which you have to be able to do as a center. So that's not necessarily a horrible thing, but he does have a reach disadvantage against the real long levery interior pass rushers, and that's gonna it's gonna lead to some clutching and some holding, which is gonna lead to some yellow laundry getting flashed every once in a while out onto the turf from the guys with the black and white blouses on. You can get, like I said, a little top heavy. You can get a little loses balance. Like, again, those things happen as you wear down. He's densely built. He has a really, really good run anchor, yet he can still get a little top heavy at times. The restriction in his lengths will lead to some block losses, especially as plays go on. But you're not going to ask Jackson Powers Johnson to do a lot of things on the perimeter in regards to reaching and those kinds of things. He'll be kind of a scoop partner or a combo partner, and somebody would go up to do those kinds of things on the perimeter. Not that he can't block on the perimeter, but it's going to be a different kind of a kick out or kind of what we call like a J block type thing, just kind of getting somebody's way. Those type of things he's going to be great at still because he can move his feet pretty well. Mm-hmm. He can overset a little bit in his pass hitches, which, again, at center, it's not going to be as much of a problem for him because he's going to be kind of two-gapping things a lot of the time to making sure where he can help first and then, come to second. But he can hitch a little bit at times, which will be make him vulnerable to like kind of cross and counter moves from the inside, which you see a lot of on the inside. Or guys that set up their moves and counter you. He can be countered a little bit and someone can cross his face. But by and large, Drew, he's savvy at picking up blitzes and stunts. He's good at that. Peninsula wore number 58 for Oregon, and they didn't give that. They weren't going to give. Colleges have tradition, and they have, they do things like, especially, he came in right after Peninsula at Oregon, mm-hmm. And they gave him that number knowing that he was going to be a guy that was going to rep it well. I'm telling you what, despite some So maybe some perceived shortcomings from Jackson Powers Johnson. That is a football player I'd want on my team.
Yeah, I don't think he works well for every NFL team. Now there's teams that are just going to have different needs, i.e. quarterback needy teams. I mean, that we're going to likely see a run of at least 3, possibly 4 in the top 10, which pushes everyone back, and obviously the interior offensive line isn't the skill position, sexy picks, but they're so important. Ask any Lions fan, right? I mean, the bread and butter of this team right now is that offensive line. It is the linchpin that holds everything together. Would love to add a guy like this, but again, like we talked about earlier, he ain't gonna be there at 29. He's not gonna be there. But you know what's ironic, Coach? When we started, at least when I started, really digging into kind of preparing for our prospect previews back in late December, he initially was looking like a 3rd round pick, but not for long. Once a lot more folks started turning their head away from the Super Bowl and the hype, then they started looking at the prospects. This guy jumped to day 1 right away and didn't hang around long between 20 and 30 too. He moved up above that, so no question, great player, gonna be a great pro. Would love to have him in Detroit, but he's gonna be starting for a team immediately in my mind. So great work there, Coach. Let's talk about our number 2 guy, Coach, because in our ratings, I know you had an initial rating set, and then you went to the film, and there were changes made. The only constant, to your point, was Jackson Powers Johnson stayed at 1, but we made some changes, right? Let's talk about the next guy.
Yep, this guy jumped up from he was at number 3, and I've been seeing this guy as somebody that was going to be at the top of the board throughout the season. Just knowing the pedigree that comes from Kansas State in regards to their interior offensive line, their offensive line in general, and the type of players that they're able to produce and that are quality football players. Really like this guy from the outset, and he climbed into our number 2 spot after we really just kind of saw how dynamic and versatile he is and how good he plays at multiple positions. Cooper Beebe, an offensive lineman, primarily a guard, but an offensive lineman from Kansas State University, our number 2 overall interior offensive line prospect for the 2024 NFL Draft for the Sports Peninsula podcast. 6'4", 335-pound senior. He's from Kansas City, Kansas, on the Kansas side of the tracks there, Drew.
Know it well.
Know it well, yeah. Automotive endeavors in that part of the country. 2-time All-American. He's the 2-time Big 12 Offensive Lineman of the Year. As voted by the sports writers in the Big 12. So this is a highly touted and highly decorated player. 3-time All Big 12 player, a 4-time All Academic Big 12 player. 1,700 reps at left guard, over 750 reps at left tackle, 105 reps at right tackle, and 25 reps at right guard in his career. All totaled, he has 2 career sacks allowed and 6 quarterback hits allowed. And all of that time in all of those different positions. He, out of any of the prospects that we are going to talk about today, there's a couple guys that come close, but he's had the most opportunities, Drew, to have a quarterback hurry, a quarterback hit, or a quarterback sack of anybody that we're talking about, and those are the career numbers. This is a football player, my friend. This is another guy that would look really good in Honolulu blue and silver.
Yeah, and the fact that you had him at number 3 prior to even going to the film, and then you bumped him up another spot, that speaks volumes for me, Coach. And let's talk about what else you like about Cooper Beebe.
Yeah, well, Drew, I mean, just quite simply, he offers, almost pure form versatility. He does not play center, but he's extremely versatile. He can play
everywhere
else. Literally guard or tackle, left or right. He can play all 4 of them. Barry Sanders is agreeing with us here. They're not not number 20, Barry Sanders. We'd love to have him on the show, of course. Talking about the Boston Terrier here. He's he's in agreement with Mr. Beebe's analysis. Extremely well built. You can see he's a thick, kind of real barrel-chested guy, kind of got a wider set to him. Real well-built frame. It really translates at both spots. Would he be one of the taller taller tackles out there? No, but he's not short to play the position either. He is definitely of size to be a guard. Including his height a little bit too. Tremendous run anchor. Kansas State is known for producing their interior O-line as guys that are great in the run game. This is another one. Cooper Beebe fits that mold to a T. Plays with great functional strength. He's excellent at picking up blitzes and stunts. That speaks to his experience and to his coaching. It's a guy that you need to be able to do that right off the get-go in the NFL. He can certainly do it. He's also an elite pass protector. He's excellent he's got excellent lateral movement, and he can really pull. He doesn't look like a guy that can move his feet so much right there. But at the college level, he was tasked with doing so, and he did so very fluidly, and he did it very well, very productive in the movement and space blocking area. He uses his hands efficiently and consistently. Not a guy that was, flagged very much for holding and illegal hands and some of those kinds of things. He's just really foundationally balanced, Drew, as a run and pass blocker. He's got a great base and foundation to work with. He really, this is a guy I still think is going to come off the board before number 29 personally. If he was there, there's a lot of wisdom in taking a guy. Okay, does he start next year? Probably not. Does he start the following year? Yeah, and probably for the next 6 to 8. Yeah. So, this is a really, really, really intriguing prospect if you're a Detroit Lions fan, let alone the NFL.
Now, you bring up an interesting topic, Coach, because you touched on would he start necessarily in year one, and probably not in Detroit. However, Zeitler is a right guard, and the task will be for Graham Glasgow to go to left guard. Now, he didn't play there not very much last year. He played predominantly right guard or center. Iowa Sika played a lot of left guard, or Sorsdal did when Jackson was hurt, which unfortunately was 4 or 5 games last year. But at the same time, I wouldn't rule out Cooper Beebe or somebody of his ilk being able to challenge at least for that role. But I think it would be very beneficial to learn behind a great veteran. Those two guys, and even Frank Ragnow too, that whole middle line. I mean, that's just a great group to work behind and study behind for a season, because to your point, in year 2, he'd be starting. But I think a guy like Cooper Beebe absolutely could possibly push Glasgow. And folks, if you remember correctly, last year out of camp, Big V was the starting right guard. Glasgow was the number 1 backup. And that's important to note. And I'm sure it wouldn't surprise me at all if there's not like, hey, he got paid, certainly got a raise and he deserved it. But I think he's probably aware there will be some competition, and he probably wants to help facilitate that. That's his role, part of his role. So Cooper Beebe, absolutely would love him in Detroit. And I agree, Coach, probably not going to be there at 29, but there's some things he's got to work on to ensure that for his own personal benefit, he won't be there at 29. He'll be taken sooner. What does he need to work on?
Yeah, Cooper's got some things he's got to work on. And some of the things are limitations as well. He's not a premier athlete. Now, he's an interior offensive lineman. We're not asking him to play point guard for, the Minnesota Timberwolves, okay?
Mm-hmm.
He is an interior offensive lineman, but there are some limitations as to his flexibility, his lateral mobility. Are those things going to translate? He was sufficient and pretty good at times as a mover at college. Are those things going to be able to translate into the NFL? Those are some questions. He's got to work to become more explosive and dynamic so that they do translate. And those are some things that he can work on, and he certainly will. Shorter wingspan guy, so he's not a natural fit as an offensive tackle. he would be playing, as a swing guy or a sub package tackle, a reporting tackle. Sure. Are you going to make your bread and butter with him playing offensive tackle for you? Probably not long term. He's an interior fitted guy, so that wingspan can be kind of protected there, but that could lead to some leverage issues. Balance and pad level can get a little high, and he can have some balance and get top heavy as he wears down. Those are some things that are going to be across the board, and those are issues he's going to have to address as he becomes more adept at his pro style of play and life when he does start playing for somewhere. That lack of athleticism was a little apparent in some of the movement drills is it's expected to be. We have, and they say these kinds of things, and should they always refine some of the things they do at the combine as far as some of the workouts and some of the movements and drills that they have the players do? I think so, because we want to definitely limit injury in those kinds of showcase events, not get those guys hurt. However, they do expose stiffness, ankle stiffness, knee stiffness, hip stiffness. If you bend at the waist a lot, if you rather than sinking your hips, it does all of those things. Those are things that they're looking for and looking at that don't lead down good roads. Cooper's got to avoid that kind of thing. Or he could get kind of washed out as a guy that just, this league kind of, takes in and wrings its hands with too.
Yeah, all legit. But at the end of the day, when you look at the pros and cons, the strengths and weaknesses, Cooper Beebe is a starting guard in this league. Is he going to be a perennial Pro Bowler, generational guy? He's not generational. Could he be a perennial Pro Bowler? Yeah.
I think it's distinctly possible. If he gets, he'll get better and better as long as his health is good. He'll get better and better as the years go through his rookie deal. His upside is extremely high.
And I love his build. He no stranger to the buffet table, Coach. Cooper's big boy. I like him. Lions fans, if he's there at 29, and I'm 90% sure he won't be, but if he is, he's absolutely going to be considered. And smiles should abound in Allen Park if that's the case, because you've got an excellent option there at a position that is of need, and certainly will be of need next year without question. So Cooper Beebe's a really good one, Coach. Nice work there. Let's talk about our number 3 prospect, Coach.
Now, this is a position-specific player. Probably he is the first position-specific player that we're going to be talking about today. And that's Cedric Van Pran Granger from Georgia. He's our 3rd overall interior offensive line prospect on the SPP big board. 6'4", 310-pound junior. Oftentimes just goes by Cedric Van Pran. Mm-hmm. He's out of New Orleans, Louisiana. He was a 4-star prospect. He's an All-American, 2-time All-SEC performer for the Bulldogs. He's a 2-time national champion. Took over 2,800 career reps as the center for Georgia in his, through his junior campaign. Now, he's a fourth year as a junior. Because of COVID, he's able to count that. He's still, but nonetheless, he has 1 career quarterback hit allowed. Now, he's protected at center. It's a little bit different. You're not on an island as much in the pass game, as the center.
Yeah.
But I tell you what, I wanted to not give Cedric Van Pran a bump in the boost, because he really was in it around 4 or 5, because he's truly just going to probably be a center in the NFL. And, he doesn't have that, position versatility that really, bodes so well for the top guys. He doesn't really offer that. Then you watch him on film and he moves better, I tell you what, Gene Upshaw Would love to, I mean, he's another number 63.
Yeah.
He molded just after him the way he can move his feet and get out and open and be a space blocker as well as his run anchor. Cedric Van Pran, very, very impressive kid, Drew. This is a starting center in the NFL.
And I love the comparison to Upshaw, coach, without question. Yeah, Cedric Van Pran's a stud. Talk about what else you like.
He's very athletic and rangy, just like we were talking about. You YouTube him. You go YouTube Cedric Van Pran or Cedric Van Pran Granger and look at his highlights. And you're going to see a guy that really can move, can really scoop out and get out in the open, be a space blocker, used a lot in screen games, perimeter run. Excellent rangy, athlete for a center. Very sturdy, solid frame, displays a really good run anchor. He's not one of these guys that's just a movement man. He can really get out and do or he can really bang in there and do some of the requisite things that we expect from a center. But he's very fluid and agile in his lateral movement. He's got a high football IQ. He's scheme versatile. You can look at the gap power game. You can look into the zone stuff. He's athletic enough to be a zone blocker and do a lot of dynamic things from the center position. He's very refined and experienced. He started 3 straight seasons, like from start to finish for the Bulldogs. In all of those seasons, it had 13 games at least they played. So, and perhaps 14. So he's played a lot of football. Very consistent pad level and hand placement. He's not a big penalty guy, has not been penalized too often. Not that he hasn't, but his hands are typically inside, and he plays with a good flat back with a good sunken hip, pad level. Quick and efficient hands. He's very consistent. He counters penetration from A to gap to A gap very well. Handles the stunners and the loopers, which, for a center to even ask them to do that, snap the ball, and then pick up some sort of stunt or blitz is pretty amazing. Cedric Van Pran's a guy you can definitely call upon to do that. He typically maintains excellent leverage. You don't see him get, beat across his face or lose a block off of his shoulder. He's really, really good at maintaining his leverage that way. Very consistent run blocker, and as a guy that can contribute, obviously, like we had said, as a pass blocker. Guy's going to start in the NFL, Drew. He's going to be a starter.
Yeah, and I love him. I love his game. The problem gauging where Cedric Van Pran's going to go in the draft is, to your point, he's not position versatile. So you've got to have a need at center and or have the luxury of being able to take him and let him sit behind your current center and then allow him to cultivate there and then eventually take over the role, which you could say the Lions could do, but it's not the ideal situation in terms of Detroit, but what an ideal player he is and how good he's a very good football player. He just, in Detroit, he wouldn't start right away because Frank Ragnow is there. But there's some things he can work on, right, Coach?
Absolutely. And here, yes, he would do that. And what would be in best interest of Cedric Van Pran Granger? To sit behind a guy for at least a year and to work himself in, because he's got to get better as a pass blocker. He's going to struggle at that. The elite interior, D linemen, they're going to, if they wanted to go head up with him and go mano-a-mano and create problems, pushing pocket and creating issues that way, they would come after Cedric Van Pran at this juncture because he would struggle in that area. He can get more aggressive too and play out of his technique. And that's something that we're going to say. We've said, about defensive linemen, we've said about offensive tackles. They can sometimes play over aggressive. They can kind of run over the top of their ability to really maintain things and clutch and grab and hold and pull and tug and get their hand up high and grab, pull around, all those kinds of things that really are mentally you're trained not to do, that you resort to out of desperation sometimes, and not, being controlled in that area. He's gonna have to work on that as well. He has been prone to getting stonewalled a little bit, so he can get punched and jacked a little bit by some really heavy-handed defensive linemen, and he will see them. He will see them in the NFL. That is something that's going to be he is going to have to be able to take on. But he's got to work on being a better pass protector. He's got to be able to do that. And can he just thrive off of the run anchor and pass protect that way as well, and be a guy that's just going to have to get better at taking things that come right at him in the pass rush game? There are guys that can do that. That would limit him somewhat. So to your point, Drew, it'd be in his best interest to go to a place and be seasoned a bit for a year.
Yeah.
And then cut his teeth. And by the end of his rookie deal, be Pro Bowl, all-pro caliber type center. So that's the upside of Cedric Van Pran, a high-level prospect.
Yeah, and just to put in perspective for certainly our local fans here, I mean, Frank Ragnow played guard his rookie year, and he came out as a center, but he had the guard versatility, and he initially started at guard for the Lions and then moved into the center position, which was ultimately, that was the plan all along. But they had the need at guard initially, and they were able to get him acclimated, probably helped them a lot too. But the team that gets Cedric Van Pran, that won't be an option. So yeah, I agree with you, Coach. Probably will sit. So it makes his draft positioning pretty wide in terms of the range. He's
a day 2 guy.
He's likely a day 2 guy. He could jump up into day 1 if there's a team that really likes him and needs a center. It could happen. I don't think it will, but it could happen. But there's guys I think we're going to talk about here because of their versatility that could leapfrog him in terms of the draft, but aren't necessarily all around better football players and athletes than him, but their versatility makes them more suitable. And hence our number 4 prospect, Coach. Let's talk about him.
Right. And just getting with Cedric Van Pran, he's not better than Jackson Powers Johnson.
No,
he's not better than that.
Nope.
So yeah, I mean, if somebody's looking for a center, that's the first center they're looking for. Yeah. And then, if there's another one, look at that really settles in on center, there you go. Cedric Van Pran could be their man. But he was our 3rd prospect. We're talking about the guy at number 4. This is a player that we have featured as an offensive tackle. We talked about him, I believe, as a dark horse on the offensive tackle side of things.
Yes.
A few weeks back, Drew. Graham Barton is our number 4 interior offensive line prospect. And he is another pure form offensive lineman, and he can play everywhere, literally. And we'll talk about that here in a second. 6'5", 314-pound senior out of Duke. Brentwood, Tennessee. So he's a Nashville, Tennessee area resident. 2-time All-American, 2-time All-ACC as a left tackle for the Blue Devils. He's a 4-time academic All-ACC player as a left tackle and center for Duke. He was a freshman All-American center. So he started the vast majority of the season at center for Duke as a true freshman. Then subsequently went to left tackle and played 2,100 plus reps there. As we said before, about 400 career reps at center. He has 8 career quarterback hits and 10 career sacks allowed. So those numbers are a little higher. Those numbers are a little higher than what we have seen here in the first 3 guys. But this is a player that typically has been tasked to come up with the key block almost every single time. They scheme around Graham Barton as an offensive lineman. And some of those things are a result of teams just, we're going to attack him and make him pick somebody up and really cause him to make a choice and take him out that way, so to speak. So yes, those numbers are a little bit higher. And yes, those are concerns too. That doesn't mean that they're not. We'd rather see a guy that has very, very few. But there are some people that have very, very few that are not as good a football players as Graham Barton. Graham Barton will be able to go into probably his NFL training camp saying, I can play left tackle, left guard, center, right guard, and right tackle for you, coach. And I don't think we're going to talk about anybody else that can really do that.
Yeah, and coach, to your point earlier, folks, if you want to see our analysis of Graham Barton as a tackle, just click and subscribe. Go on our YouTube page, and we got a playlist for you for all the 2024 prospects. He's in there, so take a look at it, and we welcome that. Before we jump into what we like and what else he needs to work on, one thing we do have to understand, Duke's definitely got an improving football program. But certainly football is not the first sport you think about when you hear Duke University. And then we know that. So has Graham Barton been surrounded with the type of talent that maybe a Cedric Van Pran or a Jackson Powers Johnson have at Oregon and Georgia, respectively? You got to ask that question, too. And so when you look at the tape, you really want to look at just Graham Barton as a whole individually, what he's doing and on tape and in his individual workouts. You put a guy like Graham Barton on a line like the Detroit Lions have, and I'm not too concerned about some of those stats we talked about earlier, Coach, because I know what he can do on the field and who he's going to be surrounded by too, who he's going to learn from. But talk about what else you like about Graham Barton as an interior lineman.
Well, he is going to offer, like we had said before, true position versatility from left tackle to right tackle across the board. Doesn't have a lot of playing experience at the college level at the guard positions, but this is something that he really has shown the physical ability and attributes to be a guard, and his football IQ is off the charts. Off the charts. He knows the blocking assignments, and that's what was said about him at Duke. From their offensive coordinator and O-line coach, is he knew the blocking assignments of every single play and every single formation and every single blocking scheme or slide protection scheme or zone scheme that they would have. He knew all of them at every spot. So, I mean, he was able to play every single position. He's an explosive, quick, long, powerful frame. So, I mean, he's a well-built guy. He's 6'5". So he's got some length to him. He's a leverage machine. Really understands how to create leverage, kind of a nuanced finesse blocker that way. But he's tenacious trench guy. He's a guy that will get in there and pound steps and work through players too. He's a battle, he battles from snap to whistle. He's a hardworking football player, a true grit guy that way. So he fits the Lion mentality in that regard. He has tremendous mobility, excellent out in space, extremely high football IQ. He plays with a real wide base and a strong anchor. And when you have a scheme like we do with the Lions, you need that. We are really to get our run game going the way we want to be able to do. We've got to be able to do those kinds of things. And, Graham Barton offers that kind of versatility to where, yes, he can be a finesse guy and do some of the zone heavy things, but, he can really be a gap, a gap power guy too, and play with a great run anchor. But he excels as a space blocker. This is another player, Drew, that I still value as a guy that the Lions could really, really benefit from. I think, yes, he does leapfrogs, Van Pran from a standpoint that, he plays every position. Cedric Van Pran's going to play one for you. He can play five. He could end up starting at center. He could start at right tackle. He could end up becoming a starting guard. He could wind up being your starting left tackle. Graham Barton, through what this league has proven, Drew, and one thing that is a constant, and we can guarantee you, is that someone's going to lose a guy for the year on the offensive line. Someone's going to get hurt. And this is that type of a player, too, that is worth his weight in gold, that can be flexed out and moved around and done different things with. Graham Barton is really a guy that is going to be a day one player in my position, in my opinion.
Yeah, and Coach, here's another guy that jumped up 2 spots on your ratings. after you took a look at the film? And I know obviously position versatility plays a big part in that, but what was the main thing that really inspired you to bump him up a couple spots that you saw?
Just how how he was able to, how he played in space and how fluid he was with, going up the field and blocking, on the move that way. He moves very, very well, and he is flat back and stern. I mean, very physical. He's a body puncher. He gets a body on a body. He can move people that way. Plays with great pad level. Doesn't quit. He'll get underneath you. He can play offensive tackle. That's for sure. He can definitely play offensive tackle. But I mean, the way he's able to root and do different things, I see a guy that, if he's a master of none, he is certainly a very good jack of all trades.
I love it. I'm fired up about Graham Barton, Coach. But there's some things he does need to work on. What did you see?
Well, he's going to settle into the offensive line or interior offensive line, just primarily probably because of maybe some, athletic limitations, so to speak. He might not be, an absolute amazing out on the exterior all the time, but he's probably going to transition to the inside just because of his movement ability is so well used in that area. All of his experiences at center, he has not played guard. So we're talking about a guy that ultimately we think is a starting NFL guard, but he's never played there. So this is something that he, proof is in the pudding, as they say, right, Drew?
Yeah.
So he's going to have to be able to do that. We talked about him being a good gap power guy when he was asked to do those kinds of things, because he was asked to do that at times at Duke, but primarily a zone spread type of blocking scheme is what he had seen the vast majority of the time. That's probably what he is best at. He's got a little bit of growing to do and some teeth to cut in regards to being the gap power guy that he would need to be in the NFL. It's probably not quite there yet. Okay. He's going to get stonewalled and outpowered at times, kind of get locked up. He's going to go into engage and really kind of just kind of get walled up. And that's, a wash out of a play. Can't make a living in the run game that way. He plays very tenaciously, and he's going to get over aggressive and is going to play out of his technique at times. He's not immune to that. That is something that he has shown as an issue as well. And he's got to improve on the perimeter. To be on the interior as a pass protector as well. His pass protection is something that's still a bit of a work in progress. But when he's been at left tackle almost exclusively the last couple of years. So there's some things that he, that he does need to get better at, has to get better as a pass blocker. But if this guy was your super sub on your offensive line as a rookie in a year or two, by the time at the end of his rookie 5, he's a starter. This is a really, really good football player. This is a guy that you're going to get your money's worth where he's drafted. Graham Barton's a great, great player to draft in this draft.
I'll say this. If you had right now in Detroit Graham Barton on the roster, life's good. I mean, Lions have some decent depth, but not to the level of a Graham Barton. They have a great starting 5 once again. But the depth is solid, but not like where you would feel super comfortable if someone does go down. And guess what? Like, to your point, someone's going to go down for a game. Who knows how long? You hope it won't happen. You don't want it to happen, but it's going to happen. So if Brad Holmes or any GM takes a Graham Barton, they see a clear path that he will help either immediately or will help at the drop of a hat if someone goes down. And then ultimately, to your point, will become an eventual long-term starter. How I feel about Graham Barton. I love him. So I'm hopeful the Lions have a shot at him, and I'm hopeful they will give him serious consideration. I believe they will. But definitely like him as an NFL pro, no question. Let's talk about our number 5 prospect, Coach. This is another guy who's not position versatile, but very good. Let's talk about him.
Very, very good center prospect out of West Virginia University. Zach Frazier. Now, this is a person through all of our ratings and our data compiling. He had popped at number 2. He was right at Jackson Powers Johnson's heels. Looking at some of the position versatility and seeing that as something that we really pushed in our rankings is a factor. Zach came down the line of the list a little bit, but boy, is this an intriguing center prospect. And for some, Drew, better than Cedric Van Pran. 6'3", 313 junior, like we said, out of West Virginia. He is the SPP number 5 overall interior offensive line prospect. Out of Fairmont, West Virginia, so on the west side, northwest side of the state, is you're starting to get up towards Ohio. That's where Zach hails. 4-time West Virginia State High School wrestling champion.
Like that.
He's as prolific as a high school wrestler as probably has really ever been produced out of the state. Obviously, there's some phenomenal ones, but this kid, you can't really do better than he did. He's a 2-time All-American for the Mountaineers, 3-time All Big 12 center, 3-time All Academic Big 12. So another guy that really works hard, really has his routine straight, good in the classroom, smart young person. 3-time team captain. 3-time team captain. That means in his redshirt freshman year, he was elected a captain. So that it speaks to the type of person this is. 4 career sacks allowed, 9 career quarterback hits. And he's played a lot of reps at center for the Mountaineers. This is a really, really intriguing prospect, Drew. And a guy, he's probably going to be a starting center in the NFL someday.
Yeah, and I would say about from pretty much a month of February, I saw a lot of mock drafts slotting Zach Frazier as a Detroit Lion at 29, and for good reason. Let's talk about what you like about him.
Oh, he's a Detroit Lion type football player. This is the type of guy that has thrived under the culture established by Dan Campbell, Brad Holmes, and company. He fits right into that. You know, he's got that grinding, gritty mentality. You know, kind of just your lunch bucket guy, blue collar mentality, good heart and soul person. You know, trustworthy, believes in the guy next to him, believes the guy that's within his own skin. You know, accountable football player. Plays with excellent and consistent pad level. He is tough. He is consistent. Plays with very good pad level. He's a block finisher. He gets his hands and roots in and moves feet and steps on toes until you are done with your pursuit. He finishes his blocks. Excellent core strength and run anchor. No one will ever take that away from Zach Frazier. As good of a run anchor and his functional core strength as any offensive line prospect in this draft. Tremendous body control, great grip strength. That's that wrestling experience that he has, that he's very good with his hands in that regard. He doesn't lose and doesn't ever lose inside leverage that way. He's a very patient and technical pass setter. Again, a wrestler. He's calculated. He knows how to counter, calculate people and work with things that way. He's an elite run blocking. For West Virginia, he was absolutely an elite run blocking center. We've moved him down a little bit, not for the sake of authenticity, but just, again, we rewarded Cedric Van Pran just by what he was able to do in the open field and showing his run anchor as compared to what Zach Frazier was tasked with doing at West Virginia, and putting some emphasis on positional versatility with our interior offensive linemen. Zach Frazier does not offer those things. But what Zach Frazier does offer you, Drew, it's as good as any center prospect in the NFL draft. And that's including Powers Johnson.
That's impressive. That's impressive, Coach. That carries a lot of weight. No question about that. What can he work on to get better?
Well, he's not going to be coming out of this. He's not going to be anything but a center. That's what he is. He is a center. So he's got, again, the shorter reach. Now, the further away we get from the football, just the lack of effectiveness he would have. He would lose leverage pretty quickly. He's going to be vulnerable to oversetting and getting countered a little bit because we're not talking about an amazing natural athlete, a very hardworking, tough kid that's amazingly strong and very athletic. We're not saying that he's not athletic, but his natural athletic ability is not long, lean, and quick. So he gets a little stiff in the lower half and is going to get top heavy at times. That's going to allow, interior guys to counter him, stunts, twists, some blitzing is probably going to have an effect on Zach Frazier at times, and not a good one in regards to the offensive perspective. He's gritty and tough, but he's not. He really is, and that goes a long way in the sport of football. Football rewards a person that's that way, but he's not a great natural athlete. He's not someone. Van Pran's much more naturally athletically talented than Zach Frazier. Jackson Powers Johnson is more athletically talented than Zach Frazier. Zach Frazier is he is what he is, and he's phenomenal at that. It's elite. And, I would certainly want to make sure that he knew that, because this is a young man he's got some strong hands. He's a big boy and he can do some damage. He's a 4-time state high school wrestling champion, but he's not a dynamic or fluid mover. He's got a power anchor, but not much of a lateral mover at all. So those are some things. He does not bring that to the table. So he's not going to be able to be some zone scheme wizard probably at the NFL level that's going to get out, into your screen game and be able to pull out and do some of those things. Not part of Zach Frazier's forte. If you're going to ask him to double and bounce and climb and be able to, create some issues for a linebacker and really beat on an interior defensive line, this is your man.
I'll preface this. I like Zach Frazier as a football player a lot. I think he's going to be a very good NFL center. The drawback I have as a Lions fan at 29 is that, number one, he's not position versatile. Number two, and coach, maybe I'm off base, man. Maybe I'm scarred from being a fan for so long, but I want that player at 29 to contribute as soon as possible, preferably immediately. But I know, I just got done talking a half hour ago about, not having the need to have that kind of guy, but you still want that. And in Detroit, I see Zach Frazier not being that guy for 2 or 3 years unless he'd have to sub in for Big Frank. And even then, it might not happen. Even then, the Lions say, you know what, we're going to move Graham inside and we'll go with Iowa Sika get guard for the time being. I don't know. But I like Frazier a lot. I'm going to trust Brad Holmes on this one. If Zach Frazier becomes a Detroit Lion at 29, then I'll know as a fan that they view him as the heir apparent, not only the heir apparent to Ragnar, but also the first man up. Likely, if something were to happen to Big Frank, Zach Frazier would plug right in. That's how I would see it. So I don't know exactly what he's going to bring. I know in 2 or 3 years, he will be exactly what you were saying. I just don't know if it's going to be in the first couple of years. So that's where I have a little trepidation, Coach. Your thoughts before we move on.
Yeah. I when I saw that too, it really started to speak to me as like, wow, Frank's thinking about hanging it up.
Mm-hmm.
And you know what? I mean, I don't think people quite realize how banged up he's been. He's been such a great football player. He's been great, but I mean, he's got an issue. I don't think it's going to go away. With his toe. I think it's just. That's going to be an issue for him. And then there's the other injuries. Yeah. So I think Frank is one of these guys that's going to go out on top. I think, he's hungry and wants to do some more things for the Detroit Lions. Thus, the timing is probably not right for Zach Frazier. If Frank was saying, yeah, I'm done after next year, like he's like, I'm after this coming up season, well, then maybe the timing is right for Zach Frazier, and that we do have that year to season him and get him a little bit better at at being a guy that can work off of some of his pass rush woes that we worry are going to have happen. As he gets as he gets acclimated to the NFL.
Yep.
And not be exposed for it.
Yeah, exactly. I'm in lockstep with you on that one, Coach. So there's some ifs, not questioning. I don't think there's a lot of ifs in terms of where Zach Frazier is going to end up 2 or 3 years from now. It's those first couple seasons, and it's going to be team specific and how they see him. But he's a very good prospect. And again, if the Lions take him at 29, folks, that's great. That means they see him as absolutely the one of the future cornerstones of this line. Because if you really think about it, in 3 years' time, who's really going to be starting offensive line for the Detroit Lions other than Peninsula? It's probably not Graham Glasgow. It's probably not Kevin Zeitler. It might not be Taylor Decker even. So that's why a pick like Zach Frazier, if they make it, will make sense because he's going to be with Peninsula down the line as one of those future cornerstone guys, just not immediate. So there's some intrigue there, no question about it. So Zach Frazier could jump up into round 1 for a team like Detroit, or it could be a day 2 guy. We'll see. It's going to be depending on the situation. Let's talk about our number 6 prospect, Coach, before we jump to those dark horses. Who do you got?
Well, our number 6 is also probably a position-specific player, fairly position-specific at UConn, but this is a guy that's probably a guard specifically. But man, does he have some physical tools that are impressive. Christian Haynes is our number 6 overall interior offensive line prospect. Like we had said, out of the University of Connecticut, 6'3", 317-pound senior. Out of Bowie, Maryland. He's a 2-time All-American for the Huskies. 49 straight starts for UConn at right, 4-year starter at right guard. He's played 49 straight games. So over 3,200 career reps at right guard. So this is a seasoned college football player, Drew. He has played a lot of football at the college level. 3,200 plus reps, 3 career sacks, 4 career quarterback hits. So highly, highly productive, highly successful blocker, an efficient blocker at the college level for the University of Connecticut. Christian Haynes, Drew. This is a guard prospect that is of great intrigue to all NFL football fans, but someone that certainly could be a name that the Detroit Lions could be familiar with too.
Yeah, and then once again, I look at my brackets for March Madness here, and I've got UConn in that final game. Matter of fact, I've got UConn winning my bracket, which probably isn't a stretch, but I hadn't been following it as closely, but they certainly look very good. You don't think of football when you think of UConn again. So when you hear about a Christian Haynes, you think, well, who did he play against? Whoever he played against, he dominated, and that's what you want to see. Based on those statistics there, that's domination. And his size, his athletic ability, and UConn's program is picking up. And heck, they played U of M a few years ago, right? I think it was last year, maybe, if I'm drawing a blank. But so they're playing some big boys now, and they're getting involved. They're what I would call a mid-major school now in terms of football. And Christian Haynes dominated at that level. And there's a lot to like about him, Coach. Let's talk about some of the things you like.
Well, he's very agile for someone of his build and size. He's very fluid and agile. It looks a little bit at times like, well, how you say he's fluid and agile? He kind of looks a little bit kind of like off kilter at times. This is a lot of body to get moving. I tell you what, he does things with his shoulders under his feet exclusively. He can really move his body well. He's great in space as a puller. So yeah, he's again a tailor-made guard. He doesn't offer position versatility, but he plays guard so well. He's skillful across blocking schemes. They've changed things up a few times while he's been at UConn, and he's always been able to answer the bell that way. Tremendous timing and comfort in his position. He's an excellent run blocker. Very, very good. Tremendous combo and double team partner, which is very important to be able to do with tackles or a center. You're always almost working with somebody, at least initially. He's excellent at it. He's a block finisher. He's got great reach technique. He's got long levered arms, really uses them well. Reliable, consistent run anchor. Really showed so at the level he played at with UConn. And he's also a very consistent and competent pass setter. He did really, really well for himself with the college football that he played at UConn, Drew.
There's a lot to like about Christian Haynes, man. Coach, he's been steady climbing the board too. I mean, the more study being done, the more in-depth scouting being done, he keeps climbing the board, and he climbed up into our top 6 certainly. And he actually, I know you maneuvered him down to 6 from 5. But again, the versatility question there, but there's no question about whether he can play guard at a high level. He definitely can. But what can he work on, or what are some things that are holding him back maybe a little, Coach?
Well, you can see it in film a little bit too. You can see he's got balance issues sometimes. It seems like maybe he'll step out of his path sometimes, or it's a false step, or he's a little too overextended at times when he gets moving, because it seems like there's sometimes he gets a little bit off balance. His pad level also looks to be a little bit high, where he's not sinking into his hips as much as he needs to. He's not overly explosive. He's more of a finesse guy, more of a finesse player. So really, we need to see that agility be able to translate the NFL level. If it does, you've got a football player here. If it does, you got a football player here. He's not, because it's not that he's soft. We're not saying that he's soft, but he's got to be able to possess something that allows for him to put his body in the place to do the damage that it can. His agility would really be a support to that. Yeah. He can overextend and be prone to overaggression. He can be a guy that is going to play out of his technique a little bit. And that's kind of maybe what I saw on film, maybe even more than what appeared to be balance issues. What was him really being overextended at times and playing out of his technique. He could struggle with leverage against the real elite interior defensive tackles that can throw you around quite a bit. DJ Reader, the guys like that, Chris Jones, that are real difficult customers to deal with, could be a bit of an issue for Christian Haynes. Doesn't have, a record of versatility in college. Has not played much, hasn't played right tackle per se. You see a guy who played right guard and some right tackle, or he played some left guard. We have not seen that. He's pretty much been a right guard, Drew, and it's probably where he's headed towards in the NFL, which is going to affect his draft position. When you got to look for a position specific, you're looking at one. We just so unhappen could be looking for a right guard in the future, which could allow this guy to get some of his affairs in order to be the elite player that he could be as an offensive guard in the NFL one day, Drew.
Yeah, I think you're spot on with Christian Haynes, Coach, and I think very, very unlikely he's a day 1 guy. Not ruling it out, but it's not likely. But solid day 2 guy, likely solid round 2 guy. There's too much upside to Christian Haynes to not want to take a chance on, and I wouldn't even call it taking a chance on him. I think the floor is high with Christian Haynes, and that's what's really positive. I think he'll be a very solid starting right guard in the NFL for a long time. His ceiling, could be a Pro Bowl, perennial Pro Bowler. We don't know. But I don't think he's going to be an elite guard, but I think he could be a very good high level player for a long time. So I think he's a very safe pick, but probably a very safe day 2 pick. But again, wouldn't mind him as a Detroit Lion if the Lions go in a different direction in round 1 at 29. Yeah, I mean round 2, if Christian Haynes is there,
100%.
Yeah, so I like him, Coach, and I like your breakdown. So appreciate it. Let's talk about the George Harrisons of the group now, the dark horses, if you will, Coach. Little reference. If you don't know that, kids, Google it. You got to learn. You're walking around with a computer in your pocket in your hand. Use it. Who is George Harrison? Those that know.
Yeah, those that know.
There you go.
Hold the beetle right there.
There you go.
Exactly. Hold the beetle there. A pretty amazing beetle.
The quiet one.
Yes. Well, Troy Fautano is our first George Harrison-esque college football prospect, Drew. And another guy that we talked about earlier in previous episodes is an offensive tackle. We're going to talk about him as an offensive lineman this time out of the University of Washington. 6'4", 317-pound junior out of Henderson, Nevada. Again, All-American, two-time All-Pac-12er. He was the 2023 Morris Trophy winner for the Pac-12. Now, that is the Pac-12 offensive lineman as voted by the defensive lineman of the Pac-12 as the best offensive lineman. So this is the player, the offensive lineman of the year in the Pac-12 that the players chose. 2,900 plus reps at left tackle. So he won that award as a left tackle in the Pac-12. He's got 99 reps at left guard. He's got 2 reps at right guard. So yes, it's only about 100 it was 1 over 100 reps at the guard positions, but very, very likely is he going inside, Drew, through his career. And a lot of it was at left tackle. So you know that he was responsible for a lot of pass rush, 3 career sacks, 5 career quarterback hits. This is a heck of a football player. Tremendous flexibility and ability to maintain his pad level. He's very, very good with his feet, very flexible, which really shows that he's probably a candidate to go inside. There's a great combination of length, athleticism, and power. Kind of brings all of those factions to the table, which makes him unique. You don't have a ton of Troy Fautanos walking around the NFL. You don't. They're more one-dimensional than he is. He's one of the best athletes in the offensive lineman class, if not the best athlete in the offensive lineman class. Really moves his body. He's a 6'4", 317-pounder that does not. He seems more like and moves like he weighs 250, 240. He just real impressive that way. Has the ability to play both guard and tackle, left or right. So he brings that great versatility to an organization. He has, outstanding agility and movement. He's very heavy-handed and physical. He can be over-aggressive and really overextend himself, and he found so in the way of penalties. We saw a lot, him be flagged for holding, blocks in the back, illegal hands to the face, those kinds of things. He's going to be guilty of that a little bit, and that's a part he's going to have to reel in and get better at. He doesn't have the most robust run anchor, so we're not going to live and die off of his ability to be a great run anchor. So does that make him a Detroit Lion candidate? We like our guys to have good run anchors. We like our guys to have good, sturdy run anchors. So maybe we have a little bit of a different outtake on what we want as one of our guards, which has gotten into my mind. Graham Barton and his style of play probably is a little bit more befitting of the type of player we're looking at than maybe Troy Fautano. Right now, that is. Had Ben Johnson taken the Washington job, we could be saying something completely different. But that's not the case. We know who the Detroit Lions are. And that is something that I'm not so sure that he befits us in that regards. But it needs refinement. He needs to be refined in his run anchor because he gets, in his run game. That's going to have to be something that has to get better because it's a limitation. Because he's been stonewalled and stalemated quite a bit at the Pac-12 level and at the high, playoff level of college football. It's certainly going to be an issue in the NFL if he doesn't clean it up.
Yeah, you hit it on the head here again, Coach. Fautanu, I'm going to defer to Brad Holmes because you can get enamored with a lot of the traits, and there's a lot to like about Troy Fautanu, but again, you got to have that base. You got to have, what do you hang your hat on truly as a lineman? And I'm going to trust that if the Detroit Lions go with Troy Fautanu at some point, that they truly have done their homework and they see a clear path of how he's going to help them right away. I love his versatility. I think he's a great player. Did a hell of a job for Washington. Certainly last year, everything came together for them, bringing in Michael Penix. I mean, they get all the way to the college football championship game against Michigan. So they did a lot of good things there, and he was a big part of it. I like him a lot, but yeah, there's some questions here, and hence why he's a dark horse candidate here and not in the top 6. So, but good job on Fatano, coach. I stayed at home with my first dark horse candidate, coach, and I got to flip the Sam Rothsteins down here because I'm going to dig deep here. Trevor Keegan out of Michigan. Love his size first and foremost. He's a senior. He's 6'6", 320 pounds. Out of Crystal Lake, Illinois. He was a team captain, which speaks volumes about Trevor Keegan. 3-time All Big Ten, part of that national championship team last of this season, 2024. 2,200 plus reps at left guard. Only 3 career sacks allowed and only 7 career quarterbacks hits allowed. So stingy. And, I think he kind of got overshadowed a little bit, coach, because of the talent around him. We didn't hear about Trevor Keegan as much. I just see a lot to like here. And what I do like is the fundamentals. He plays with a wide, strong anchor, fundamentally sound, excellent fundamentals. You want to be able to work in the NFL. You're drafting guys. You want to make it ideally have excellent fundamentals. You're going to teach them to be even better and stronger at the NFL level. You want to bring that to the table, and Trevor Keegan does. He's a sufficient athlete, and he moves well. Again, this isn't a phenom in terms of athleticism, but he's absolutely what you need for an offensive guard in the NFL. He can deal with speed or power. That again, not necessarily position versatile, but he can handle different types of styles that you're going to throw at him on the defensive side of the football. So that's really important. Great balance and anchor and pass protection. Got to have that. He's smart and he's nasty. So when, that's in, you want a nasty, gritty football player, all grit, right? Hashtag all grit. Well, Trevor Keegan brings that to the table. He's a block executor. So he's going to make, once he gets you, he's got you. So the key with Trevor Keegan, you want to beat Trevor Keegan, you got to get around him. You're probably not going through him. And when he gets you, he's got you. So you got to be a special player on the other side of the football. That's really what I like a lot about Keegan, coach. What does he need to work on, or what are some of what's holding him back a little bit? Well, he's not rangy. So he's not a rangy space blocker, and we don't foresee him being that at the NFL level. So again, can you get around him? NFL players probably can, but you're not going through him. So that's important. He can get clutchy and a little undisciplined with the hands, which I'll be honest, I'm hopeful that he can get coached up out of that, because I think physically he brings enough to the table where he can just trust what he brings and trust his ability to get a little better with that and more disciplined with that. Does need to refine his pass settling, and he is prone to counter moves and superior athleticism. So you've got to have a special skill set and an elite skill set to beat Trevor Keegan, but there's a lot of guys like that in the NFL, coach, and that's where it's like, do as a GM or as someone scouting him, coach, do you see him as a guy that can overcome that and be very effective at the NFL?
Absolutely. I think this is a guy that's drafted on day 2, somewhere into day 2, if not in day 3, somewhere relatively early. And he plays a rookie contract if he stays healthy, at least, and could very well become your starting guard very easily. If I'm the Detroit Lions, I'm keenly interested in him as a depth piece that has potential to develop as a developmental starter. He and the next guy that we're going to talk about. I mean, Trevor Keegan for sure possesses those requisite attributes. He's a run blocker. He wants to be able to get in there and help you on the run. Those pass setting things, we can work on that. We're not talking about an island left tackle or right tackle that's working off of an edge player from the standpoint of the edge. He is somebody that's going to, yes, he's got to be able to do some of those things and handle an outside pass rush, but outside to him, away from the football. But these are things that, yes, seasoning can occur and would, and a guy like Trevor Keegan, especially the type of player he is and how accountable he is, and be ultimately very successful. Injuries will be what would ever limit him, because I think he is a guy that is definitely an NFL starter, Drew. I think that's his ceiling is NFL starter, and that very, very easily can happen.
Yeah, and having seen him as much as we have, Coach, I'm confident in that too. I really am confident he'll be a very good NFL player down the road. This is the guy here, Coach, your next dark horse that to me is also the Hendon Hooker of this draft in essence too, because of what happened last year. Talk about Zach Zinter.
Absolutely, and we're just going to skip over two positions, same school, same city, from left guard to right guard. We're going to talk about Zach Zinter, offensive guard prospect out of U of M, 6'6", 322, almost carbon copy build to Trevor Keegan. They're almost exactly the same build. Out of North Andover, Massachusetts, he was a 4-star prospect, so he was a big name coming into Ann Arbor, comes out of even a bigger name. 2024 national champion. He was an All-American at U of M, 2-time academic All-American, and a 3-time All-Big Ten selection. 2,297 career reps at right guard, 3 career sacks, 5 career quarterback hits allowed. That puts into perspective that Trevor Keegan and Zach Zinter were your two starting guards these last 3 years. What was the team's overall record in the last 3 years? It's the best in college football.
Yeah.
So these two individuals are a huge piece of the winning and what they were able to do at the college level. He's got an excellent run motor. Zach Zinter is really at his best when he's grading the road, so to speak. Plenty of power and drive in his run game. He really, really can get on some train tracks and really huff and puff and do his thing. Tough, gritty throwback player. Another guy that sounds like a Detroit Lion, right? Yeah. He really exudes that kind of temperament and mentality and kind of player that they have there. He's got outstanding balance and technique as a pass setter. As good as he is in the run, he's got great technique in his pass blocking technique. He's got great initial punch and drive, great length, and he's a leverage creator. And at 6'6", 322, you'd expect to be so. Get top heavy at times. A little bit stiff. He's a little bit of what they refer to as a waist bender, which means he's got some limitations in his feet and his flexibility and speed and nimble-footedness. But at 6'6", 322, we're talking about a guard, not a wide receiver. So these are things that you can overcome. Doesn't play with a lot of functional strength. As much of a run blocker and gritty, tough player he is, he's not a guy that just is freaky with the strength. That's where a guy like a Zach Frazier flexes amazing functional strength, even though he's locked in as a center. Zach Zinter is locked in as a guard and doesn't possess some of those kinds of things. So that's going to be a limitation. That's going to peg him down the board. That with that critical knee injury that we saw occur, in the Ohio State game, that was rough. And or the broken leg. That's when we saw that critical injury. That's going to peg him down a little bit too. But some of those things are concerns that some have of Zach. He's never going to really overwhelm a defender, which that's okay. That's okay. You don't have to. You don't have to just absolutely own them and pancake block everybody to be successful. You want to be successful over dominant any day of the week. As if your domination is really sporadic. So he's not a tremendous natural athlete, Drew, but this is a guy that is a great blocker and football player. Great blocker and football player. Day 3 is likely where he's headed. And I tell you what, if he was in and around, I don't know what we're going to do if we're going to acquire some more picks prior to 164 or where we stand in that area. If Zach Zinter's in that 164 to 201, 205 range, I would really, really take a good peek at him because he's a guy, again, that could become a starting offensive lineman by the end of his rookie deal.
Yeah, and I wanted to ask you because I compared him to Hendon Hooker. When I say that, Hendon Hooker was a 3rd-round pick by the Lions last year. Some would argue he was a 1st-round candidate, if not for that knee injury. Zinter has the broken leg in the last game of the season last year against Ohio State before the playoffs, obviously. But Coach, if not for that injury, had he been projecting to be a day one guy?
Because he doesn't have that position versatility, I'm not sure day one. Maybe for somebody that's really trying to plug in a guard, especially a right guard. Then he could have been a guy that somebody had a bullseye on. I would have said day two for sure. He was destined for day two, and a guy that would have penciled in at camp is probably somebody starting right guard, is what I would guess. But because of that injury and some of the things that maybe he displayed a little bit too, that need to get there and aren't quite where maybe some others are. And he doesn't have the position versatility, could be a reason why he pegged down a little bit too.
That makes a lot of sense, but definitely the injury certainly, unfortunately, hurt his draft stock. But I wouldn't say it was catastrophic per se.
No, otherwise we probably wouldn't be talking about him.
Yeah, exactly. So I agree. By all accounts, he's going to be ready for camp. So
yeah,
this is a very safe pick and perhaps an absolute gem on early day 3, or maybe if you like him a lot, late day 2. But Zach Zinter is going to contribute and eventually be a starter. To your point, I agree. I like him a lot. Coach, I dug a little deeper here. When South Dakota State has been producing some talent lately, and I really like Mason McCormick, the guard. He's a Sioux Falls native. He's 6'5", 315-pound senior. He's a 4-time All-American, 4-time All-Missouri Valley Conference member, 2-time captain. He had over 3,000 reps at left guard, only 2 career sacks and 2 quarterback hits allowed. So again, when we're talking about the smaller school players, you want to see dominance, and we did see that from Mason McCormick, which is why I like him a lot. And he's a really good hand fighter and very good with his hands in terms of placement. So that's real important. He's a block finisher. Again, once he's got you, he's got you. He's going to take care of business, and that's a good thing. Flexible and fluid in his movements, very strong and with his leverage skills. He's an excellent space blocker. And what I like a lot too, Coach, and you would put this together, he's very active on the second level. So like his ability to get to the second level. Being a Detroit Lions fan, we know how important that is. I mean, you look at any of our film breakdowns for our Chalk Talk or any of our reviews from last year. If you click and subscribe, you can do so. We highlight this all the time. So it's very important that a guard is able to get out in space on the second level and make things happen out there too. Mason McCormick can do that. Great core strength and hand strength. So what does he need to work on? He's agile, but he's not quick. Okay, so again, he's not stiff, but again, doesn't have that quickness, but he does have some agility. He could struggle with elite quickness at the NFL level. But again, like you had mentioned earlier with in previous breakdowns, Coach, today, you're a guard, not a tackle. So it's not as important in terms of a guard to be able to handle that 6'3", 245-pound missile that's coming at you. It's going to be a little more, being a guard, you're going to be more of a compact situation. Can he translate to a space blocker / puller in the NFL? So again, we know he can go to the second level and be effective, but can he pull? Can he do that effectively? And he does struggle with big interior defensive linemen. So that's going to be a challenge. So you brought up DJ Reader. I'll bring him up again. He's gonna struggle with a guy like that who's 6'3", 320 plus pounds and also can move. But again, I look at it this way, Coach. Who's not going to struggle with a guy like that? I mean, DJ Reader is a great player for a reason. It's not because he's just taking advantage of the weak guys. He's pretty good. So that's why I really like Mason McCormick. I think he's a day 3 possible gem. We saw the Lions do that with Colby Sorsdahl last year out of William and Mary, which was an even bigger stretch. William and Mary isn't pumping out football players necessarily. South Dakota State's been on the map a little bit recently, along with North Dakota. So there's some athletes coming out of these schools now. I like Mason McCormick a lot. What are your thoughts?
Well, yeah, and you allude to a great point. Cedric Van Granger, center, Georgia, SEC. Had to play Alabama multiple times, Tennessee multiple times, Ole Miss, LSU multiple times, Auburn multiple times, Florida. We can keep going down the line. Texas A&M, we can keep going, we can keep going.
All good schools, yeah.
The type of talent that he faced and for how much football that he played as compared to the type of talent that Christian Haynes has played.
Yeah.
Mason McCormick has played. These are the things that those types of guys are going to have to answer, okay, because they haven't seen that elite size like we're talking about that Mason, McCormick, supposedly struggles with more than others. He hasn't really seen it, and even if he saw it, he hadn't seen it yet.
Yeah.
He hasn't seen what he's going to see in the NFL. So those are the growing, pains that Mason McCormick is going to have to go through. But another guy, Drew, I mean, I watched him, saw his name start resurfacing. He was not a guy on our board at first, let alone not in the top 20. He didn't even make the board. And because we have about, I want to say about 44, 45, 46 players that we've ranked. But then eventually, as things changed and we started doing updates, he popped on there. And before you know it, his combine performance, he's now in the top 20, and here we are talking about him. This is another intriguing Detroit Lions day 3 type guy. This is the type of guy that it seems like, if Brad Holmes, takes him, this is the type of guy he strikes right square on the head, the nail on the head with. Because he does all those things that we ask from our offensive linemen to be able to do really, really well. So I'm intrigued. As all get out by Mason McCormick.
And I appreciate that, Coach. One thing I wanted to, before we move on here, before the comments start flowing, I'm not saying he's better than a Javion Cohen or guys like that we mentioned our top 20. No, he's not in our top 20 for a reason. We don't think he's better than them. What I am saying, though, is that if you took a flyer in the 6th round, maybe 7th round on Mason McCormick, he may end up starting for you in 2 or 3 years, 4 years maybe. It's possible. That's why I like him. I think he could bring great value in late day 3. Not saying he's better than the guys we mentioned, but he could develop into that with lower draft capital. That's why we like him as a dark horse. It's not that he's necessarily showing that he's better now, but he could develop into that. So just to make that clear. Coach, you got another one here too, another dark horse candidate. Who you like?
Yeah, my last guy is Christian Mahogany, who's just another offensive guard, exclusive guard-only type player out of Boston College, 6'3", 322-pound, big, thick kid out of Elmwood Park, New Jersey. He was a 3-star prospect coming out of high school when he went to Chestnut Hill there in the greater Boston area. Great place, great school. He was 2-time All-ACC there. He missed the entire 2022 season due to a lower half injury. So that was critical to some of his rep numbers because he only had 1,530 reps at right guard. Well, he's only really played, about 2.5 full seasons. So really, he was dependent upon quite heavily at right guard in his career for the Eagles of Boston College. 32 reps at right tackle, and he has 2 reps at left tackle too. So he's played a little bit of offensive tackle, primarily a guard. 1 career sack allowed, 2 career quarterback hits out of the reps that he had. So that's very, very impressive stuff. He's a throwback style mauler. This is your run style, run first, gap power guard. Plenty of driving power. He's a block finisher. This is the guy that has a lot of the attributes that Zach Zinter has. Might not quite be as tall as Zach Zinter, but he's probably got a little bit more requisite strength and core strength and push, and he finishes blocks. He gets into you, and he wants to finish you. He's right there, number 10, is about ready to get throttled with those hands, and that's what he brings to the table. He's got a great guard build, that thick, sturdy kind of wide barrel-chested, wide-bodied build, excellent run anchor. He's skilled as a double team and combo partner, very good at those block, and that's what guards guards ultimately do. He's a very effective pass protector. He's very effective in pass protection. He's got great quickness for his build and size. Real thick guy, but can really move. Got to refine as a pass blocker. When we talk about these smaller run-first type guys, they are truly better at one facet than the other, and he is definitely better at the run facet than he is at the pass setting at this point in time in his career. He's got to work on it. Got to get better. Needs to work on his hands and his techniques just to be able to counter. Guys, interior defensive linemen nowadays are like martial artists with their hands. They are quick, almost like fighters, boxers, MMA guys. You know, they have unbelievable hands. Christian's going to have to work on those things because that's an area in which he could get worked a little bit. He's going to get crossed and counter moved in the pass game. You know, especially if he has to play a lot right away. Those are some things that are going to pop up on him as they'll scheme on him and stunt on him a little bit. It's going to cause some problems because he's not quite there yet. Doesn't have an abundance of experience in that and abundance of athletic ability. He's not just a tremendously natural athlete that way. He could use some more agility and movement skills. He's going to have to work on those things and refine those parts of his abilities. Again, a guy that could get drafted on day 2. I suspect he will. Could he be an elite starting offensive lineman in this league? Yes. Is it next year? No, he needs to work up that way. If he got drafted by the Detroit Lions with one of our picks on day 2, I would be a real happy camper because this, my friends, would be a future starting guard.
Yeah, you go a different direction in at pick 29, different position group, and absolutely Christian Mahogany becomes a candidate day 2. I like him a lot too, Coach. Really do. I agree with you. Would need refinement, but and more in seasoning, but at the same time, the Lions are at least in a position where they could afford that right now, and you know. In a pinch, probably would be able to start. You know, Colt Sorsdahl did it briefly last year, a couple games. You know, Iowa Sika did it a couple games, so no reason to think that Mahogany couldn't either. I like him a lot. Yeah, I think it's a good pick. Here we go, our last dark horse, and I went real deep. I had to go to Worcester, Massachusetts, Coach. I lived 20 minutes north of there in Gardner, G Vegas, back in the day, between 2010 and 2014. I drove by this fine institution and their football field every day off I-290. But that's not why I have CJ Hansen on here. He's a very good football player. So he's from New Jersey, Wyckoff, New Jersey, team captain at Holy Cross and an All-American, 3-time All-Patriot League player, had over 2,300 reps at right guard, only allowed 1 career sack and only 6 career quarterback hits. So he's 6'6", 305 pounds. And obviously a senior. What do we like? Well, he's got tremendous agility and athletic ability. So he's definitely an athletic guy. He has a long athletic frame. So he's 6'6". We talked about other 6'6" guys. He's only 305. So about 15, 20 pounds lighter than some of the guys we've been talking about here. He's a great space blocker and second level mauler. So I like that he's able to get to that second level, and maybe that's what's keeping that weight down for him. But at the end of the day, he's able to get to the second level well. High football IQ. He picks up stunts and blitz as well. You definitely like that recognition, and he's been able to display that on film. He's very good at that. In interviews, he's been able to articulate that to scouts and coordinators. This is a good thing. Plays with good pad level. That's very good. You talked about waist bending a little bit earlier, Coach. CJ Hansen's pretty good with this. He's a leverage creator, and his frame presents position versatility. So if you look at that picture there, that's a tackle. That's a tackle right there. That's what that looks like. And he could play that in a pinch, we believe, if needed. What does he need to work on, or what's happening here that maybe are concerns? Well, he can get off balance and lack the physical timing needed to execute. So to me, that's reps, playing against more elite competition. If you believe in his physical ability, you like what you see on tape, he can learn and get better over the next 2 or 3 years, getting seasoned on your bench, waiting to get his opportunity. He does struggle against elite pass rushers. There you go. Well, he's going to be facing elite pass rushers every day in your practice. So if you trust in his ability, you'll like that he's going to get better because he's going to be facing that kind of competition day in and day out. More of an effort player than a power player. Depending on how you look at that, if you're zone oriented or more finesse style team, that's not a big deal. But if you're definitely a power gap offense and you rely on that, and the Lions are a power, they can do a lot of things, but they in second halves of games, they like to wear down the other team's defensive line. So that the strength and condition, not condition, but the strength would have to definitely improve here. I'm not saying CJ Hansen's even going to necessarily get drafted. I don't know that. I don't know. I'm questioning that, coach. But at the same time, I think CJ Hansen could be a welcome addition for depth on an NFL team and could work his way into a spot where, if given an opportunity, and Evan Brown comes to mind a couple years ago, was an undrafted free agent and was a free agent signing by the Lions and ultimately had to start in a pinch at guard and center. And while he's parlayed that into a nice career for himself, I see CJ Hansen as being maybe a guy like that. Your thoughts on him?
Yeah, I think, there's a lot of frame. There's a lot of frame and a lot of athletic ability to work with there. I mean, he looks really, really good on film, but again, he's playing against Patriot League talent. He was definitely elite level for that level of football. But yeah, he's a pro football player. I mean, okay, if it's not the NFL, it's the UFL. If it's somewhere, I'm not already calling for him to go to the UFL before he even gets drafted in the NFL. He could be an NFL Pro Bowler, but I do think he gets drafted. I think it's going to be on day 3. Primarily a right guard, throughout his career, and his sample size is of that at the FCS level, the Patriot League level on the East Coast. So, I mean, he's a little bit limited in that area. But that being said, he's also somebody that he's so fluid in his ability to pick up stunts, high football IQ, smart player, really, really active at the second level. I mean, if you do those things and you've got some film in doing so, you're definitely going to have some piqued interest from some NFL scouts and GMs and offensive coordinators.
Well, Coach, that wraps up the interior offensive line. And before we sign off, just to kind of bring it all home, pick 29. If you're Brad Holmes, how seriously are you considering taking a guard or center at that spot?
Less probably than I was prior to Cam Sutton's issue. However, again, as you alluded to, we're not necessarily drafting a starter there either. So, I mean, are we talking about something that's going to start for us? We're probably at 29, maybe not talking about somebody that's a starter for us. Yeah. So could it be another position outside of the interior offensive line? More so now than it was probably about a week ago, when I really thought, when we were getting ready to get this presentation put together, that's where we were going with this position group right here. It still could be, because there's 4 or 5 players that I like at that spot. And I don't know if I can say there's 4 or 5 players that I like at that spot in any other position group. So I certainly think it could, Drew, because we are talking about a position group that needs long-term answers to it. Amid guys like Peninsula going to be getting their money and that kind of thing. So yeah, certainly think it's possible. If not, I really would expect that on day 2 that it is addressed in some way, shape, or form, because really Kevin Zeitler is not a long-term fix. And Graham Glasgow, because of his flexibility, could be moved around to either both guards or the center spot. And and we've talked about Frank Ragnow maybe, starting to show some signs where he's going to have a shorter NFL career. So I mean, by choice, and which is wise on his part. All those things being said, yes, this position could be still alive and well for the 29th pick for the Lions.
the intrigue is there. The excitement's been brewing for weeks now, and certainly in the next 4 weeks here leading up to the draft here in Detroit, it's going to definitely crescendo, and it's going to be fun. We're looking forward to it. Thank you, everybody, for watching. Thank you for subscribing. Don't forget to subscribe. Click on the link. Subscribe to the channel. Like the videos. Get updates. We put out content every week, and we'll be covering this draft class. We continue to cover it all the way up to the draft itself. We'll have a first-round mock draft right before that first-round date, so stay tuned for that. We look forward to that every year, and that'll kick off our 7th season here on the airwaves. So for Coach Andy Shield of the Marine City Mariners, my name is Drew. Take care, everybody. Thank you for watching, and we'll talk to you soon. This has been the Sports Peninsula Podcast. To subscribe to the podcast, simply click the subscribe button on our YouTube channel's homepage and give us a like. You can also follow our audio podcast on multiple platforms, including Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, and Google Podcasts, just to name a few. Give us a follow on Twitter. Our handle is @SportsPodcast to check out our latest releases. Thank you again for watching and for your support. Remember, when you want to hear all about sports in the great state of Michigan, there is only one Sports Peninsula Podcast.